Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Jai Guru.
And welcome to Yogananda Podcast. We have the quartet here today. Lauren is here with us. Mike.
Quintet.
Is that what it is? Sorry, I wasn't.
Don't
Yeah,
know.
I knew it was
Sounds right.
Is it? Okay.
What's the five
Four or
one? I
five.
don't know.
Yeah, quintet. Yeah, that's right.
Guruji, there you
Yeah,
go.
Guruji is always among us.
Quinta, yeah, I'm learning Portuguese. So quinta, quarta, quinta is the fourth, fifth. So quinta, that threw me off. Didn't sound right to my mind. So,
yeah, Priyank is very versed in French, so he knows.
Thank you, Priyank, for your multilingual.
It's an abuser.
Nice. And you join us, really, if you haven't joined us before, this is where we talk everything Yogananda. We're on the Autobiography of a Yogi, line by line, chapter 26, and we're covering the third part of this chapter. So
what's the chapter called?
That's a good question for Priyank.
The science of Kriya Yoga.
There we go.
Thank you, Priyank.
Good curveball, well deflected.
Thank you. We're getting good at this. So the science of Kriya Yoga, chapter 26.
Who's the author, Lauren?
Paramahansa Yogananda.
Is it?
You can't catch me out on that, at least.
We're brushing up on our knowledge on this podcast, throwing tests at each other. Join in the comment section if you're learning along with us. Respiratory rate. We're going to look at that today. The effects of sleep, outward and inward flow of energy in Kriya when practicing Kriya Yoga, and the effects of the brain. Going to look at what Yogananda Guruji calls the victory over the last enemy, and then we're going to finish off with Shakespeare's sonnet. Lauren's going to set the tone for the reading of that sonnet, so just prepare for that, everybody.
No pressure.
The pressure,
yeah.
So nice. So before we jump into all that, we have to look forward to what did we cover in the last episode.
Okay, so we looked into Kriya Yoga even more. We had some further explanations on Kriya and how it works, and Guruji brought in more links from other spiritual masters of the time. And so we had more from Patanjali, and we had some from the Bible, St. Paul, and how they all link together and how they all talk of the same thing about Kriya in different ways. So really strengthening that knowledge that, this isn't a new thing. It's been around a long time. We also learned about how Kriya affects us and our evolution, and that it quickens our evolution at quite a rapid rate if we practice correctly. And then we discussed the two different states of samadhi as well. So we covered quite a bit.
Correct. Do you remember how many years it would take you if you covered 24 Kriyas done properly? How many years it would cover the million?
No, million?
Wasn't it 58? 50 something? It was, I don't actually know. I think we calculated it, didn't we? That if done properly.
Oh, sorry. I thought you meant natural evolution. Sorry.
No, the Kriyas. It's
in one lifetime. Yeah.
One lifetime sufficient. So
1,000. Yeah.
Indeed, yeah. So it's all mathematically laid out for us. Fascinating subject. We're going to look at some more of the subtle elements of this process of Kriya Yoga now. I mentioned the respiratory rate and the effects, or really what it says about the effects of the conscious state of the beings. Yogananda breaks this down for us, so let's jump into it, shall we? The first line's really incredible for me. The ancient yogic technique converts the breath into mind stuff. Pretty incredible statement initially. I think from there, my mind just throws up, 100 questions like, what does this mean? Yogananda, as I said, breaks this down, talking about the spiritual advancement that one can cognize, is able to cognize the breath as a mental concept. So this is an active mind, a dream breath. So what's your take, guys, on this, Priyank? Come to you.
Firstly, the word mind stuff feels pretty profound, doesn't it? Just
Mm.
did a quick check, and it was in 1870, coined by a British mathematician called William Kingdon Clifford, who said that the fundamental substance of reality, which he believed to have an inner mental nature rather than a strictly physical one, i.e. mind stuff. Quite a lovely word, isn't it? Set of a couple of words.
Mhm.
For me, when I heard that, when Yogananda say that the breath becomes mind, I always think of it as the mind is something that is a bit hard to control, and this technique gives you an extra handle on the mind, putting the mind in the right channels, making the mind work for you instead of against you.
And I love the next line. Breath essentially is created by your own delusory state. I.e. is really just a dream, as Guruji keeps telling us that life is, and it's kind of confirmed in the next sentence, i.e. a dream breath.
Yeah, exactly. The insinuation really is that it's not necessary. Right? That's what I take from it. So, as you said, very poetically there, Priyank, this dream breath, it's an act of the mind. So Guruji says that there is indeed a mathematical relationship between the respiratory rate of man and the various states of consciousness. So we all know this ourselves. When we get into a state of arousal, maybe there's some sort of argument, attempting to do some delicate or difficult physical feat, you breathe very slowly automatically. So if you notice that, if you're aware of the breath, you'll see this maybe day to day. Your breath rate will change depending on what it is your mind is focused on, what you're concentrated on. So Guruji goes on to say about the fixity of attention. That's not pronounced right. Fixity of attention depends on the slow breathing. So if you're breathing quickly or unevenly, this is going to inevitably harm the emotional states. And so generating more is how I understand this fear, lust, and anger. So it's going to prolong certain states. And so what I read this and I think to myself, well, so what? So in my work, there's a manager that always asks this "so what" question when you make statements. And to me, this is the antidote to all of this is controlling the breath, being more aware of the breath. Guruji gives these practices to do this. We're going to read them in a little moment to help us get away from these harmful emotional states of lust, anger, and fear. So Guruji identifies some of the problem and it gives us a solution as well. So an example Guruji gives is the restless monkey breathes at the rate of 32 times a minute. And I've been to Nepal recently, monkeys everywhere in Kathmandu, if anyone's been there. And they are incredibly restless, incredibly, nervous. And I can just see this breath work fluttering away, their little lungs fluttering away. Whereas man has an average of 18 times. Comparatively, though, there's animals like the elephant, tortoise, snake, other creatures that have longevity of life in particular. Their respiratory rate is much lower than man's. It's the giant tortoise, for instance, might attain the age of 300 years, Guruji says, breathes only 4 times a minute. So there's a couple of links there. One's the emotional state of man, because we have, much wider range of emotions, depth of emotions. But then there's also this secondary point that he's making about the longevity of life.
And I found it weird that snake was there in my mind, that they don't live that long. But we've talked in the past about the mystical connection with snakes and cobras, and in Hinduism especially. So I wonder if that's why it's there. But the longest living snake is like the ball python. It lives to like 50 years. But I feel like that's not what he's kind of talking about here. But good conjecture.
Mm.
I love the fact about the tortoise. It's actually one that stayed with me since I first read the book. And whenever I find myself like getting quite restless with the breath because of, I don't know, maybe an emotions come up and I'm breathing a bit faster, I think of the tortoise and I think, breathe like a tortoise, breathe like a tortoise. And, you know, it actually works. If you use your mind to try and slow your breathing rate and therefore your heart rate, like you can. You can. And yeah, no, it's just one of those facts that just really stayed with me.
Mm. Yeah, apparently snakes, several minutes to an hour, is they kind of hold their breath for that long. It's pretty.
Wow.
I never knew this either, but yeah, I wonder in particular which snake Guruji might be referring to, because yeah, I wasn't aware that they were known for their long lifespan, but maybe some of the listeners can help us out unravel that one.
Which
But yeah,
naga?
yeah, maybe it's a different time that he's referring to as well. So this is all fascinating stuff, right? And every time I think about this, like Lauren, you referred some of the processes you have, but whenever I think about the subject in general, I always think about Babaji. I don't know why, but my mind always goes to Babaji. And there was an instant where, wasn't it Guruji that he appeared to, that there was a bit of excitement and then he disappeared? Is that the story, right? And
Something
so
like that.
was it? That's the story, right? And he disappeared because there was a bit of a moment of excitement, and this restlessness might then affect this connection with the body. And you know, I pictured him just not breathing, really.
Was that Sri Yukteswar by any chance?
Was it Sri Yukteswar? Yeah,
I think so. And then next time he saw Babaji, he didn't bow before him because Babaji had just left and didn't come back. Yeah.
No, thanks. So my mind goes to, you know, the eternal Babaji for this part of the book. And Guruji, I mentioned, gives us some techniques, like what, you know, the so what question comes up. What can we do with this information? And as Lauren says, you know, if you're in a state of restlessness, your emotions are high, what can you do to improve your situation? One is controlling the breath and proper breathing. So we're going to have a couple of readings. Mike, you can kick us off on that, on what Guruji says we can do to control the breath and therefore improve our emotional states and so on.
Proper breathing is so important to keep your blood charged with vitality. Learn and practice this method. First, throw out the breath with a strong double exhalation, one short and one long. Then inhale in a double inhalation, one short, one long breath, filling the lungs as full as is comfortable. Hold the air in the lungs for a few seconds, allowing the oxygen to be fully absorbed and converted into prana. Then repeat the double exhalation, followed by the double inhalation. Priyanka is practicing it right now.
Practice this method in fresh air. That's what I didn't do. 30 times in the morning, 30 times at night. It is very simple, and I can just attest to that. It is very simple, very effective as well, having just practiced it. You will be healthier than ever if you follow this. This exercise brings in a great deal of extra life force and also decarbonizes your blood and promoting calmness. True words.
True words never spoken. Thanks. Thanks, chaps. So there are other breathing work. Obviously, pranayama is, you know, something that's very dear to all of us, but this is simple. Anyone can do it anywhere, anytime, as long as there's clean air. That's the only factor to really consider. But other than that, you can practice it wherever, 30 times. So there's a number for you. I think after that, you'll be feeling like you're walking on air.
You'll need, if you're going to follow that to the T, you'll need some beads with a little bit of string that tells you how many 30 is.
Or fingers. I'm really getting used to using the fingers now.
Nice.
You know,
Or you can just count in your mind.
or you can just count. to advance, Mike, what are you talking about? No, kidding. Yeah, you could just count as well. So Guruji talks about the breath work. We're going to look at the effects of sleep now as well. He touches on this, and these are just, there's boundless information within these subjects, and Guruji just touches on it very, very lightly for us in this part of the book. The rejuvenating effects of sleep, Guruji goes on to say, are really due to the temporary unawareness of the body and breathing. So we become a yogi every night, where we're unconsciously performing these yogic rites. Guruji says, releasing ourselves from this identification with the body, and merging with the life force in the healing currents in the main brain region and the 6 subdynamos of the spinal centers. Science has gone a long way. We could probably read in all the scientific efforts that have gone in so far to studying the brain and the effects of sleep and the benefits and the necessity, really, of this process. So it's quite an exciting subject. Guruji was talking about it over 100 years ago. Priyank, what's your take?
This whole chapter is I think it's like an advert for Kriya, and every like other paragraph there's like a teaser for us, or for someone who hasn't yet taken the step of becoming a lesson student or a Kriya applicant, because like here it says sleeping man becomes a yogi, he does it unconsciously, and then you get that joy. But essentially that he's saying that you're doing that unconsciously, which then means that it's not controlled, it's not as effective as it could be, which is coming in the later pages, which really then get you to think, okay, if I'm doing it like without any effort, imagine what I could do if I put in some effort, or if I applied some scientific methodology. So it feels like it's just such a good subtle pull for you to do it for real.
Got me. Anyway, Mike, you're on mute.
There are such small things that are everywhere in Guruji's teachings, and this note here about sleep is really big, because I think we all know the last 10 years, I think, there's been paper over paper coming out about the positive effects of steady, sufficient sleep every night. Like the body repairs blood vessels, the body repairs the heart, you feel less hunger when you get up. It's good for your mental health as well. So it's really a small thing when you think about it, but it has a profound effect on your life.
Yeah, memories, our ability to store memories, and cleans up the brain. But when you say all these things, all I can think about is the previous chapter, Sleepless Saint, we talked about. So one can be true, but for the reasons that Guruji is breaking down for us, that it's this process of which just common man, let's say, isn't aware of. This sleeping man becomes a yogi each night, unconsciously performing the yogic rite that we do consciously, right? So let's break it down. What's he talking about here? Guruji says that, again, unknowingly, the sleeper is being recharged by cosmic energy that sustains all life through the yogic practices that we all perform. It's very simple. Guruji says it's a natural process consciously being worked, not unconsciously, like this slow-paced sleeper, as Priyank, you mentioned there. So this technique is going to saturate all of the physical and feed all of the physical cells with undecayable light. Such a beautiful combination of words there. Undecayable light, divine light. And this keeps us spiritually magnetized. So Guruji has said before, if there's something really weighing on you, some kind of stressful situation, take a nap. Just go and have a snooze for 20 minutes. And, it's a part what he's talking about, the physical benefits, but you are performing some slower but beneficial yogic practice of filling yourself with undecayable light as well. So, and spiritual magnetism. There are references to this topic of filling your body with light. And Jesus very famously said in Matthew chapter 6, 22, verses 22 and 23, in the King James Bible, the light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. But if thine eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. So a bit of a warning there as well from Jesus Christ on the similar topic about filling the body with light. We'll do that through our practice consciously. And so Guruji says that we are scientifically making breathing unnecessary through this yogic process, pranayama, Kriya Yoga. So during the hours of practice, the negative states of sleep don't befall us. And that includes the unconsciousness or death states. So the bodily decay, which we're going to touch on in a moment with Yogananda's passing and what happened to his body, as we all probably know. Not, no
spoilers.
Not jumping ahead. No spoilers yet.
There's always that. You always find an excuse why you don't have time for meditation or why you should have a short meditation. And one of the best excuses I find is, oh, I need my sleep. Like, it's past midnight. If I, do my hour and I'm going to 5 hours sleep, then I'll be tired the whole day. The next morning's meditation won't be very good. So what am I achieving? All these tricks that you play on yourself. But if you take what's written here, breath becomes mind stuff. The whole world is a dream. And if you practice meditation more and more before going to sleep and upon waking, and if you do it well, then you'll need less sleep. So you can either be like in the circle where everything is beneficial in your life, or like try and use your own skewed logic and try and apply the teachings, not as Guruji is telling us to. So I feel like it's all there. We've just got to just dig a little bit deeper.
Yeah, and I find that if I do that, right, and I go, oh yeah, well, my sleep, that's important. The more I sleep, the more I feel like I need it, and it becomes like a cycle, right? But yeah, like you say, if you do your meditation, and especially if it's a deep one, you actually need less sleep. So it's probably much better to just go and meditate, and then you won't need to have as long of a sleep. But yeah, it's definitely a bit of a cycle.
Yeah, creating bad habits, things like that. We're going to touch on that in a moment, actually. Yogananda touches on that. There's a bit on breathlessness before we move on from this section. Lauren, you can read it. It's taken from the yogananda.org website. But it's pretty interesting take. Yogananda gives a bit more information.
He says, breathlessness is the way to God. Practice pranayama and you will know how to meditate, how to perceive God and be one with him. The interiorization of the mind that comes through pranayama is called pratyahara. That is the next step. The consciousness is turned within, away from the senses. Then true meditation begins.
Nice. So when your friends ask you about meditation, there you go. You can hit them with that. That might raise a few eyebrows. It's not just sitting in restlessness, as Guruji says in the lessons. Frank? Oh, you're on mute.
What's after pratyahara, Chris?
What's after pratyahara? I don't know, samadhi? Dhyana?
No, that's the last one.
I forget the order of them, okay? This is the next thing I need to learn. After
the next one is dharana, dhyana, and then samadhi is the last one.
Dharana, dhyana, samadhi.
And what are each of those, Priya?
So we you'd have to start from the beginning. So it goes from, do's and don'ts, the right meditation posture, then it goes to pranayama, life force control. Pratyahara is essentially withdrawing the energy from the senses, and then dharana is single-minded attention and focus, and dhyana and samadhi is the highest state. So it's all like kind of I can't just go, okay, this one is this. It all just follows this ladder of divine attunement to samadhi.
Nice. And for I guess, as Yogananda says here in the next section, for folks in the regular world that aren't practicing Kriya, the outward world is where the energy flows. And that's really is Kriya. Practicing yogis, this outward and inward flow is super, super important for us. As Parag said, this is the steps on the ladder that we're all working towards, moving upward towards the samadhi state. And Yogananda says that in men under Maya, or natural law, the flow of energy is toward the outward world. So we're reversing that process through Kriya towards the inner world. Unfortunately, the senses do get abused, and the currents, these life currents, are wasted in that outward flow of attention and energy. So practicing Kriya reverses this flow. The force is mentally guided to the inner cosmos, becomes reunited with subtle spinal energies, Yogananda says. So this reinforcement of life force in the body, in the yogi's body, and brain cells are renewed by a spiritual elixir. So I thought to myself, well, there's quite a lot on this subject. We have touched on it before, so we don't want to go into massive detail, but let's have a reading on this. There's a great story on YSS of India. And to summarize the initial part of it, really from Yogananda's talks and writings, he mentions about the greatest enemy being bad habits. And in order to free ourselves from fate and overcome these habits, we have to practice Kriya Yoga. So, having good company is very important. If there are people with tendencies to drink, to have these certain bad habits, we really want to distance ourselves from this. There's a bit of a reading here that will talk about how to reverse and overcome these habits that form pathways in the brain. And Priyank, you can kick us off with the beginning of this reading.
Every time you meditate deeply on God, beneficial changes take place in the patterns of your brain. First, meditate upon the thought, I and my Father are one, trying to feel a great peace, and then a great joy in your heart. When that joy comes, say, Father, thou art with me. I command thy power within me to cauterize my brain cells of wrong habits and past seed tendencies. The power of God in meditation will do it.
Rid yourself of the limiting consciousness that you are a man or a woman. Know that you are the child of God. Then mentally affirm and pray to God. I command my brain cells to change, to destroy the grooves of bad habits that have made a puppet out of me. Lord, burn them in thy divine light. And when you will practice the self-realization techniques of meditation, especially Kriya Yoga, you will actually see that light of God baptizing you.
So Yogananda goes on to share a story about how there was a man in India who had a very bad temper, and he was a specialist in slapping his bosses when he lost his temper. So he couldn't really hold a job down for very long, as you could imagine, slapping your boss. And he had this uncontrollable irate temper. So he went to Yogananda and asked him, I need help. And Yogananda goes on to tell him what to do, really. Counting to 100 before you act is one way of overcoming that initial, desire to react. And then, because the man was saying that he gets more angry when he does that. He thought his case was hopeless. Yogananda goes on to tell him this, Lauren.
Guruji said, after practicing your Kriya, think that the divine light is going into your brain, soothing it, calming your nerves, calming your emotions, wiping away all anger. And one day your temper tantrums will be gone. Not long after that, he came to me again, and this time he said, I am free from the habit of anger. I am so thankful.
I've shared this story about myself a few times, right? And this is exactly, now that I know and I've read what Guruji said about it, I know exactly what happened when I started practicing Kriya, which is at the time I was drinking, socializing with friends and so on, and it all fell away. And I couldn't really explain it at the time. So I know this is 100% real. It's true, you know. I lived that change quite consciously. So if you have anything that's whether it be anger or whatever it might be, you could use this technique Guruji says here, which is a great blessing to have that key to unlock higher elements of life. Guruji goes on to talk about the victory over the last enemy. This last enemy, we're going to find out what that is. It's definitely a catchy turn of phrase. He mentions about through the proper use of food, having sunlight, you know, proper harmonious thoughts, being led by nature, and the divine plan will achieve self-realization in 1,000,000 years. So even if you do all these things, it's still going to take you 1,000,000 years. And to someone's point, I think, Priyank, you asked about this. Is it 1,000,000 years of evolution overall, or is it 1,000,000 years of human evolution? Mike, I think you came up with the answer here. It looks like this is, you know, as humans, that's a long time. If you divide the average lifespan, that's a lot of lives that you would have to go through before self-realization. So this 12 years of normal, healthy living are required for even the slightest refinements of brain structure. And so 1,000,000 solar returns are required to purify their cerebral tenement sufficiently for manifestation of this cosmic consciousness. Long time, Mike.
I'm just fascinated with that number. You can break it down, right? Like, you don't know how long a life is in other planets or in other yugas. I mean, we do know a little bit. Imagine you live 1,000 years, then 1,000,000 years is just 1,000 lifetimes. So still a lot, but not as much as you would think.
Looking at the details, it says 1,000,000 years, and then he clarifies that it's 1,000,000 solar returns, and that would then imply that, because we know other planetary systems have their own, you know, star, which then have their own orbits, and our orbit obviously takes 365 years, and you can calculate what that is in seconds, but that doesn't obviously apply for other planets, even in our solar system, and also other planets in other solar systems. So their solar return time is much longer. So their 1,000 solar years, you know, 1,000,000 solar year returns may be shorter or longer. And equally, then the life on those, you know, individual life of a soul in a particular body in those planetary systems may be shorter or longer. So I think and we know there's other planets out there, right? Guruji talks about them as does Sri Yukteswar in the coming chapter about his resurrection. So I think it may not necessarily be this planet. And if you're really interested in numbers, in terms of like the evolution of man from, you know, to Homo sapien, this is I think it is a good explanation for what we're seeing here, because if you're really into biology and evolution, then this might not make sense to you in terms of what we're taught.
Yeah, there's a reading, very short one. Lauren, you can take us through just on the purpose of life, and it ties into what we're talking about here. Yogananda said.
The purpose of life is to ascend the 6 spinal centers, reinforcing the human consciousness progressively with greater and greater lights, until it is able to unite with the all-pervading 1,000-rayed brilliance in the highest center in the brain. This ascent of the consciousness through the spine may be achieved slowly through right actions and right thoughts. The yogi, however, chooses the quicker and more scientific method of meditation.
Nice. Some beautiful words in there. All-pervading 1,000-rayed brilliance of the highest center in the brain. Wow, what a line. Yogananda goes on to say that man comes here on earth for the sole purpose of learning to break the cords that binds his soul. Disease, failure, negation, greed, jealousy. Break these bonds now. You're in the cocoon of your own bad habits, and you must be freed to spread its wings of beautiful divine qualities in the divine romance. Frank.
Yeah, it's just Guruji's words in Divine Romance and here they're just so they just really speak to just irrefutable logic of why we should do this, isn't it? Why we should invest ourselves and all of our life to this. And it's also interesting that he has to keep like using different ways to get through to us, different, examples, different language, rather than just like, love God or merge with him. That will be the simple thing, but we don't listen to those simple things. We need all this like logic, that's irrefutable logic.
Yeah, it's so compelling, right? And it's imbued with his energy. So that's maybe apart from the beautiful poetic nature of how he speaks, which is maybe linked to what we're just about to go over shortly about Shakespeare's sonnet. It's so compelling every time you read his talks. So Guruji goes on to say that this untying of the cord of breath, that's the thing that binds us to the soul. So it's a critical place to start, and it's the key really that unlocks these deeper states to actually go into true meditation when we withdraw from the senses and so on. So Kriya serves to prolong life, and it, Frank, is an interesting comment here, because it's not the first thing that I really think of when I think about yoga. It's prolonging life, is it?
Yeah, we want to. It's a bit of a catch-22 because we don't want to stay in this world of delusion and suffering, but at the same time, we want to make the most out of this human birth. So, if we're, if we've got the three, those three things, that three blessings, if we've, if we're on the path, if we have the desire to know God, if we have a guru, if we have all these things in our lives, then we really have to make the most of this life, which then means that you want to extend this life to as long as you can until you actually make it.
Yeah, it's good insight there, good comment. The enlarging of consciousness is really, this is what Kriya serves to do into infinity. And this technique, this yogic technique that Guruji talks about, helps us to overcome the tug of war, he says, between the mind and matter entangled senses, and this freeing thereof devotee, thereof the into the inherit eternal kingdom. And so this physical encasement is then, we're made aware of this through the breath, through this breaking of the bonds. And it's something that we actually have read the reading on a little bit further on this purpose of life that Yogananda has given us. This mastery of the body and the mind, the yoga, Kriya Yoga, ultimately helps us achieve victory over the last enemy, death. So death is the last enemy that we must overcome to join our Father in eternal heaven. I actually thought this talk about light, do you guys think that it might be what the masters see? and can sort of see in all of us this light at the different chakras or the darkness within us. If they can see beyond the physical, they can actually see, we talk about Sri Yukteswar's ability to sort of see the astral form of folks and so on, but it might be this, right? Like we're trying to ascend the consciousness, as Guruji talks about, through the spine, through this process, through quicker methods of this process, and this 1,000-rayed brilliance to the brain and the 6 centers of the spine. So I just thought, I saw in my mind's eye, like, oh, maybe this is what the gurus, the great masters see when they look at all of us in terms of what we need to work on and so on. I just got a nice little image of that. I wonder if it's true. So we have reading on Corinthians that 15:26, it says the last enemy shall be destroyed. The last enemy that shall be destroyed is death, which is a beautiful, beautiful line. And Guruji continues to bring in the West and the Bible and marries it up with the knowledge of the East. And beautifully done there. And the incorruptibility of Paramahansa Yogananda's body is the next subject for conversation that we'll touch on here. It's a real fascinating subject. My mum was really interested in this as a Catholic, Christianity, because it's a subject that's known all over the world, where saints would be able to leave a mark to the world to say, hey, pay attention, and we're going to break this down in a little bit more detail. Priyank, do you want to jump in first?
Yeah, just we have in different sections of the autobiography, it's not necessarily written by Yogananda. So this footnote, for example, can't have been written by Yogananda because it's about his own passing. So it's obviously a publisher's note, and this publisher's note wouldn't have been on obviously the original, the first edition of the Autobiography of a Yogi, but SRF reserves the right to add footnotes and other things as time goes on. For example, presidents. Later in this chapter, there's Rajarsi Janakananda's picture and a little message from him. That's been added a bit later. So yeah, this is another one of those things. It's the SRF that's added these notes here.
And the footnote 13 talks about this incorruptibility. Proved Yogananda is a perfected Kriya Yogi. There's, outside of SRF, I love how there is a testimony that you can read if you want to jump online. We can maybe link it in the body of this podcast for folks to read the fuller version. The Forest Lawn Memorial Parks and mortuaries in the American is an American corporation that runs and operates a chain of cemeteries, funeral homes, and crematories, and they talked about Yogananda's incorruptibility, his body's incorruptibility. And so I think this is one of the directors of this organization that were responsible for handling Yogananda's body at the end, gives in a letter, this newsletter from the Forest Lawn, insight as to their professional opinion as to what they saw. So Mike, you can take us away.
I think that's at the end of the autobiography. I remember reading it there.
Yeah.
Perhaps just pulled it up.
Yeah. It says the absence of any visual signs of decay in the dead body of Paramahansa Yogananda offers the most extraordinary case in our experience. No physical disintegration was visible in Yogananda's body, even 20 days after death. The body was under daily observation at the mortuary from March 11, 1952, the day of the last public rites, until March 27, 1952, when the bronze casket was sealed by fire. During this period, no indication of mold was visible on Yogananda's skin, and no visible desiccation, drying up, took place in the bodily tissues. This state of perfect preservation of a body is, so far as we know from mortuary annals, an unparalleled one.
Mm. Yeah, really significant words from folks who deal with this on a daily basis. They're not, I wouldn't say they're biased, these folks. And so in the footnote, it goes on to say, actually, not all great masters would manifest this non-decay in their body after death. It really only occurs, this miracle, in Hindu scriptures to tell us. The Hindu scriptures tell us that it really only occurs for some special purpose. And this special purpose in Paramahansa Yogananda's case was to give the Western folks something to think about. And like I said, it was really my mum, whenever she came to me about this, she heard about this. Somehow she must have been doing her research on Yogananda, and she saw that this was one thing that was a special case on Paramahansa Yogananda's death. And this convincing of the Western values of the value of yoga is this special purpose in this case. So Yogananda Ji had been commanded by Babaji and Sri Yukteswar to serve to the West. So this purpose that he had to ultimately build trust in the life and in death. So this is why it was done. Otherwise, cremation would have been the way forward. But Sri Yukteswar was buried, right? So maybe not. So yeah, very, very fascinating aspect of the practice of yoga and what it actually can accomplish. And this is just one of those things. There's a really beautiful sonnet from Shakespeare here that finishes this part that we're going to cover in chapter 26. And we'll not read out the bit that's in the book. We'll actually read the whole thing out. When I read this, I realized I'd kind of seen this before. I thought, oh, this would make a really cool, the ending of this sonnet would make a really cool, like, heading on WhatsApp or something, like as your tag or something. And it's one of the four of us actually has this ending as the tag on their WhatsApp. So as it turns out, can you guess who is the question to the listeners? So sonnet 146, Shakespeare. Poor soul, the center of my sinful earth. Lauren's going to take us away.
Poor soul, the centre of my sinful earth, these rebel powers that thee array, why dost thou pine within and suffer death, painting thy outly walls so costly gay? Why so large cost, having so short a lease, dost thou upon my fading mansion spend? Shall worms, inheritors of this excess, eat up thy charge in this thy body's end?
Then, soul, live thou upon thy servant's loss, and let that pine to aggravate thy store. By terms divine in selling hours of dross, within be fed, without be rich no more. So shalt thou feed on death, that feeds on men, and death once dead, there's no more dying then.
Wow. So the talk is that Guruji had a, let's say, a strong connection with Shakespeare. Can we say more? I don't know.
Yeah, we can.
We can, yeah. But it's said that Guruji in a prior life was indeed William Shakespeare. Certainly rings true whenever you see how beautifully poetic in this lifetime as Paramahansa Ji. He is. So he's carried that over from prior lifetimes, and the beautiful insight. Wow. I mean, Craig, it's you that actually has this WhatsApp quote. And so the last two lines of which are in the Autobiography of a Yogi are the ones that really stood out for you the most, I presume.
Very much stood out to me, very moving for me for some reason. I think anything to do with mortality seems to move me for some reason. But I think now that having read the whole poem, which I had not done since till today, thanks very much, Chris. I might have to switch to another of the two lines.
Oh yeah.
Maybe mix it up year on year.
Which one would you go for? I was going to
Yeah,
ask you.
You'll have to wait and see. I'm going to have to reflect, but yeah, I've got something in mind.
Yeah, I love the line that within be fed, without be rich no more. Yeah, really, you can meditate on that. And such a beautiful inclusion, really, in the topic, the victory over the last enemy, Guruji gives us. And with that, we finish this part of chapter 26. Great to have you all with us. Thank you very much for listening. We have more to look forward to. We should be finishing the chapter in the next episode, right? Or no? We're not
No.
having a shake of head. No, sorry, we've got two more. We've got
too many. Too much to do in the next episode.
Okay, yeah, nice. What do we have to look forward to, Frank?
More benefits of Kriya and the disbenefits of not having Kriya, i.e. having a regular life, and also the perils of having the inverse of a altruistic life, the anti-Kriya one. And there's also lots of readings from God Talks with Arjuna to bolster our understanding.
Awesome. With that, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks to the three of you for taking us through that today. See you next time. Check.
Thank you, Chris.
Jai Guru.
Thank you.
Thank you.